I gave the greatest performance of my life.
So all these stories reveal far more.
And nobody saw it.
Bruce Beresford was among the last 18-year-olds to get drafted for national service in Australia. He later joked to the Sydney Morning Herald that he was the worst gunner in the Tank Corps. By his own account, not exactly a decorated military career. In 1980, he made Breaker Morant. The film dramatizes something most people have never heard of, the first war crime prosecution in British military history. Back in 1902, during the Second Anglo-Boer War, the British Army court-martialed 3 Australian lieutenants and charged them with murder. The whole movie is essentially a courtroom drama about military ethics, the death penalty, total war, whether soldiers should be punished for following orders they were given. Heavy material for the guy who called himself the worst gunner in the Tank Corps. John Huston served as a major in the U.S. Army during World War II. He was fighting in the Pacific Theater. As a filmmaker, he'd done pretty much everything by the 80s. Film noir with the Maltese Falcon, romantic adventure with the African Queen, you name it. So for his war movie, he decided to do something nobody had really tried. Combine an escape film with a sports movie. Escape to Victory is about Allied prisoners who end up playing a football match against a German team. And the cast is insane. You've got Sylvester Stallone in goal, Michael Caine running the squad, and then actual football legends like Pelé and Bobby Moore on the pitch alongside them. Real players doing real tricks in a Hollywood movie about prisoners of war planning an escape during halftime. Joseph Sargent directed some solid thrillers in his day, like White Lightning or The Taking of Pelham 123. Before any of that, he was a soldier fighting in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II, one of the bloodiest engagements American forces faced in Europe. His war movie was MacArthur, a Gregory Peck biopic about General Douglas MacArthur. The film is ambitious. It tries to cover MacArthur's entire military career, which spans 3 wars and decades of service. Peck carries it with this mix of grace and intensity, playing one of the most famous generals in American history. The guy who fought in the Bulge, directing a movie about the guy who commanded the whole Pacific Theater. Before Mel Brooks ever satirized Nazi Germany and the producers, he actually fought against it. He served in World War II as a forward artillery observer and a combat engineer. That meant clearing minefields and blowing up obstacles so the infantry could move forward. Actual combat work, not a desk job. Most people know Brooks from Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, comedies where the jokes never stop. But in 1983, he starred in a remake of the wartime romance To Be or Not to Be, and instead of directing it himself, he handed the reins to Alan Johnson. Johnson brought something different to it, more warmth, more sincerity than you usually get from a Mel Brooks project. And Brooks, the guy who made his name on parody, plays it completely straight. No mugging, no winking at the camera. Just an honest performance in a love story set during the war he actually fought in. Clint Eastwood served in the U.S. Army from 1951 to 1953, years before he ever played Dirty Harry or the Man with No Name. In 2006, he did something unusual. He made 2 movies about the Battle of Iwo Jima and released them both the same year. Flags of Our Fathers tells it from the American side. Letters from Iwo Jima tells it from the Japanese side. The whole film is in Japanese with subtitles. Both are good movies, but Letters is the stronger one. Tighter, more intimate, willing to show the good and bad on both sides without pulling punches. Eastwood made the obvious American version, and then he made a whole second film just so people could see what the battle looked like from the other side of the line. Oliver Stone was an infantry soldier in Vietnam. When he came home and started making movies, he looked at what Hollywood was putting out about the war. Stuff like the Green Berets, and it drove him crazy. Everything was romanticized, cleaned up, made to look noble. Stone knew that wasn't what it was like. So he wrote Platoon to show what he'd actually experienced. The arguments between the platoon sergeant and the squad leader about whether what they were doing was right, the chaos of the battle scenes, All of it came from Stone's own time in combat. He wasn't imagining what war might look like, he was remembering. Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, and Willem Dafoe all gave strong performances. The film won Best Picture, and Stone got to put something honest on screen in a genre that had been full of bullshit for years. William Wyler served in the Army National Guard and the Army Air Forces, made it to lieutenant colonel. He'd eventually win 3 Oscars for Best Director, including 1 for Ben-Hur. But The Best Years of Our Lives was different from his other films. There's no combat in it. The war is already over. The whole movie is about 3 veterans coming home and trying to figure out how to be normal people again, how to reconnect with wives who kept living while they were gone, how to find work, how to stop feeling like strangers in their own lives. In 1946, millions of guys were going through exactly that. The film was a massive hit, critically and commercially, because it wasn't showing audiences the war. It was showing them what came after. Robert Altman served in the Army Air Forces from 1943 to 1947, made first lieutenant. He'd go on to direct Nashville and Short Cuts, get 5 Oscar nominations over his career. But MASH was his first nomination, and it had a trick to it. The movie is set during the Korean War, following doctors at a mobile Army surgical hospital who are trying to keep soldiers alive under impossible conditions. There's dark humor everywhere. But in 1970, the Korean War wasn't what people were thinking about. Vietnam was still going on, and the country was tearing itself apart over it. Altman couldn't make a movie directly criticizing Vietnam. Too controversial, would have killed the project. So he set his anti-war satire 20 years in the past and let audiences make the connection themselves. MASH was a hit, launched a sitcom that ran for 11 years, and Altman got to say everything he wanted to say about the war everyone was actually thinking about. John Ford is mostly known for westerns starring John Wayne, Stagecoach, The Searchers, all the films that defined what that genre could be. But Ford also served in the Navy from 1942 to 1945 and earned a Purple Heart. They Were Expendable is about Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3, the PT boat unit that tried to defend the Philippines against the Japanese invasion. John Wayne starred, which helped sell tickets. But what stood out was how Ford shot the naval combat. He'd actually been on boats in wartime. He'd been wounded. When he put that on screen, it showed. David Ayer served in the Navy from 1986 to 1988. His first big screenplay was a submarine thriller. But when he wrote and directed Fury, he went to land warfare instead, an American tank crew fighting through Nazi Germany in the final days of World War II. The cast included Brad Pitt, John Bernthal, and Michael Pena, and the battle scenes are visceral and ugly. Critics praised the old-school approach, how the film didn't shy away from showing that tank warfare was brutal, claustrophobic, and terrifying. Ayer had never been in a tank in combat, but he'd been in the military, and that shaped how he approached the material. He wasn't trying to make war look exciting, he was trying to make it look like something you'd want to survive.